on Purpose. I'm your host, Christy Gardner, and together we explore how each of us can find great joy in fulfilling our purpose, which means living deliberately and making the choices to get us where we want to go. This is podcast episode number 4, The Myth of Perfection. When I was in college, I worked as a job expediter at the Computer Science Center. Computers were a really new thing back then. In fact, so new that most people hadn't even heard of them. Way back in 1943, Thomas Watson, the president of IBM, said, "I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers." Well, Tom, I think you were a little off on that one, but I digress. So in our job, we handled the cards that students punched with their code and rubber banded together the cards into what we called jobs. We'd accept the jobs at our service counter, remove the rubber bands, and set them in a can. The contents of the cans were fed into the massive computer. It filled a whole room. Once the jobs ran, that is, once they had been fed into the computer and the results printed out on lined paper with holes on each side to feed through the printer, we tore the serrated pages into the appropriate submissions and gave them back to the students. Then we recorded what jobs were completed on a phone message, so students could call in to find out if their assignments were ready for them to pick up. I know this is a bit complex, so stay with me. On occasion, a loud ding would sound from the computer room, signifying that the computer had shut down. Usually the cause was not intentional, but a bad program submission could stop the whole computing process. Sometimes police would come because someone had written a malicious program that would cause the printer to go back and print and reprint the same paper. The malicious programs could damage the whole computer system, from calculations to printers. When that happened, my fellow worker and I had to be the ones that recorded the sad news that people's homework was not ready and might not be for some time. My workmate's name was Becky, and we had a lot of fun recording unique messages when time allowed. So Becky and I recorded this message, and the students loved it and called each other to listen to our broadcast, which basically also shut down the phone system. Here's what we sang. Ding, what an awful sound. Someone's bad program made the system go down. No programs out, people shout, nothing ran in the can. Ding, click, and work, computer. Well, they thought that was pretty funny, and that was a long introduction. But I think the imagery could prove helpful to us as we think about perfection. In our efforts to write the perfect plan for our lives, we make a mistake. And then, instead of allowing ourselves to let it go and move on, we rewrite our mental code so that we print and reprint what we did wrong, blaming ourselves, feeling guilt, sometimes even going so far as to damage our internal computer that helps us keep perspective and recognize our worth. Why is it that when we mess up, we all too often rake ourselves over the coals and feel we have failed? I believe it is because of the myth of perfection. Many of us turn to the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament and point to that as we point to ourselves and feel a sense of hopelessness about our ability to cope with the challenges we face. But if you read about 20 verses of Matthew chapter 5 that precede the commandment to be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect, you will realize that Jesus is talking about being perfect in love. And love is something we can all do. It's just a continuation of the command to love God and love one another, including loving ourselves. When we love ourselves, we are patient with the learning process that is part of our earthly journey. Here's that passage in Matthew, if you don't have time to look it up yourself. Ye have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee turn not thou away. Ye have heard that it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor, and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. For if ye love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same? And if ye salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Be ye therefore perfect, and I'm going to add, in love, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. When our children were growing up, I read them a book by Madeleine L'Engle titled A Wrinkle in Time. L'Engle's words and her story are so compelling and instructive. I highly suggest you get a copy and read it. And no, the movie does not do it justice. Here is a highlight. Quote, "Don't try to comprehend with your mind. Your minds are very limited. Use your intuition." Unquote. Those of you who read the book will recall the infamous It, with the compulsion to make everyone on the planet conform. Children had to bounce balls in perfect unison. Everything was tightly and perfectly scheduled. And if someone deviated, they were punished. So fear became the motivating factor in obedience. I think when we are obsessed with obtaining the myth of perfection, believing it to be real, we create a fear in ourselves, a sense of panic, because intuitively we know perfection doesn't exist in our present state of development. When we have children, we watch them as they grow and develop from birth. First, their eyes learn to focus. They control the muscles in their neck to move their head. They scoot, and then they crawl, and then they walk. Have you ever seen a child give up on their learning process and refuse to try again when they fell the first time? I believe that the urge to grow is divinely instilled within us. It is only as we get older and believe in the myth of perfection that we become discouraged and think that we are not capable of trying again. God is patient with us. We are His children, and He loves us. Why would He expect us to become perfect without our having the chance to learn and grow, make mistakes, and figure out new solutions? That is part of the magic of living. We get the opportunity to learn and grow and make mistakes and fail and come up with better ways and try again. As my friend Leslie Householder says, done is better than perfect. When we accept the exciting, motivating, inspiring challenge to come up with new ideas and reframe our experience and keep going with faith and enthusiasm, we teach ourselves that life is a magnificent journey with the marvelous opportunity to try and fail and learn and grow and become. My brilliant nephew is an architect. During his training, his professor was showing him all the perfect examples of various types of architecture, and it occurred to Clayton that there was perfection in each of the buildings, but they were and are uniquely different. Clayton asked this profound question: do you believe there is an infinite variety within perfection? I remembered that question as I was preparing this podcast, and I contacted Clayton to learn a little more about it. He recalled, "It was a discussion about the idea of perfection in architecture, but it can be applied in all creative works. Where you can perfect a skill, like scales in music or painting or stone carving, there can be a pinnacle of skill. But the variety of outcome, when it comes to composition, is as infinite as our individuality. So as you perfect your skills, it opens an infinite variety of compositional variability as you work within eternal principles of creation, which are based within geometric and proportional relationships. Clayton continued, "It was to address my concern about maintaining our eternal individuality while becoming more perfect. I don't believe perfection is on a pinpoint or at the top of a pyramid. I believe it's a state of being that, when reached, enables us to exist in our full potential." He's pretty amazing, but then so is each of us. We are each amazing children of God with infinite uniqueness and ability and gifts and experiences, opportunities and interests. How is it possible to be perfect? You already are, because you are the perfect you. No one can be perfect in being you except yourself. So your privilege is to learn who you are, envision who you want to become, use your intuition, and live into that vision. Most importantly, love yourself enough to recognize that this quest to become you is a lifelong journey with failures and flub-ups and trying and do-overs over and over again. But not to rake yourself over the coals, because that's part of the process. And not to print and reprint in your memory the failures, but instead keep that vision in your focus. And if my intuition is correct, that process continues on even after we leave this earthly existence. So learn to love yourself and to be patient with yourself as you progress along this magnificent journey. The Unitarian minister Jenkin Lloyd Jones said, "Life is just like an old-time rail journey. Delays, sidetracks, smoke, dust, cinders, and jolts, interspersed only occasionally by beautiful vistas and thrilling bursts of speed. The trick is to thank the Lord for letting you have the ride." If you want to catch glimpses of perfection, allow yourself the time and the chance to observe the perfection all around you. Notice the sunrise and the sunset. Notice the waves in the ocean, the predictability and order in the planets, the amazing sequence of seasons and day and night, the veins in the leaves, the muscles and bones and sinews in your body. But even more importantly, recognize the perfection in your baby's toothless smile, the perfect little hand that clutches yours as you go on walks with your toddler, the perfect delight in your child as she runs toward you with her arms outstretched. Notice the perfection in the hug you share with your spouse or your dear friend. Notice the perfection in connection, and stay connected. What a wonder it is to be experiencing this life here and now together. So stay connected. It's good to be busy. It's good to be productive. But the greatest perfection we can produce is found within loving ourselves, our God, and each other. So no matter how busy you are, take a minute to make a difference and find the perfection and savor it that is in every precious moment. Hope your week ahead is fantastic. Sending you love.